Welcome, everyone. We have an exciting data analytics visualization and the role of AI discussion panel. I won't introduce myself since Elaine did a great job there. We truly have a great treat today with the panel that has been put together. We have Krishna Chiriath, the VP of Head of Digital, Data and Analytics at Zoetis. We have Dr. Chitra Durai, founder and CEO of Amicus Brain Innovations. And we have Pat Duran, Chief Technology Officer and Executive Vice President of Research and Development at Synchronos. So what a great wide variety of industry, different landing in what they're doing for their organizations. So there are so many wonderful topics that we could steer this conversation when we start talking about data analytics, visualization, and AI. But, of course, we are going to steer this towards career discussions, tools and skills, keeping in line with SheTek's goal of bringing more women into the field of technology. So I'd like to start off with each panelist introducing themselves and the role within their organization where data analytics, visualization, AI is involved. We'll start off with Krishna, we'll move to Chitra, and then we'll move to Pat.
Stacey, Chad, and team, great to be here. I joined at the tail end of the previous discussion. It looks like a very intriguing topic and would love to learn more about it. Great to be here. My name is Krishna Chiriath, Head of Digital Data and Analytics at Zoetis, which is the world's leading animal health company. Today is actually the 1-year anniversary of me joining Zoetis. It's an intriguing coincidence. Most of my career has been in the triangle of digital data and analytics across management consulting, healthcare, and I also teach part-time at Carnegie Mellon in the executive education program. Again, man of limited interest, I teach digital strategy, data strategy, and analytics strategy for aspiring CDOs, but good to be here.
Thanks. Chitra?
Thank you, Stacey. And good afternoon, everyone. And thank you to the Pampton team for inviting me to be part of this panel, and Stacey again. So I'm Dr. Chitra Durai, a trained AI scientist of 30 years of research and development experience in the areas of data and analytics and AI. Now I am the founder and CEO of Amicus Brain Innovations. Prior to that, I had a long 20+ year career at IBM in various parts of IBM, from IBM Research to IBM Global Technology Services to IBM Consulting, having different roles, leadership roles in bringing data and analytics and machine learning and AI to the clients. The last role I held was I was the global CTO for AI. In 2018, I decided to change my life altogether. Instead of having a nice retirement into the sunset years, I decided I'll start from the very beginning. So I got out of IBM. I took myself out of the IBM career, and I started my company, Amicus Brain, which is an AI-first company, and we are focused on bringing AI technology to solve the problem of reducing caregiver burden and increasing self-efficacy for people living with neurodegenerative disorders. Especially, we are focused on dementia and Alzheimer's disease and other related dementia.
Wow, thank you, Chitra. Pat?
Sure. Thanks, Stacey. Thanks, everyone else, for joining today. So I'm Pat Duran. I'm a CTO for Synchronos Technology. You may not have heard of them. It's a company that really specializes in software and hosted services for carriers, companies like Verizon, AT&T, British Telecom, to provide services to their customers that, as is very relevant to the panel today, involve large swaths of data. So backing up all the photos on your phone, sending email back and forth from you to your friends, or text messaging and advanced and enriched messaging. We provide those types of solutions to carriers at scale globally. I have been with this organization, with Synchronos, for quite some time now, about 18 years. But prior to Synchronos, had many different roles in engineering, architecture, starting with AT&T, General Dynamics, to small startups as well that I was with beforehand. My background, in case I didn't say it when I started, is in engineering and technology. And today I effectively run software development, hosting, and managed services for my company as the CTO.
Great, thank you. You know, when we all met ahead and we talked about, you know, different experiences, but we really didn't talk about, I think what I just heard was each of you are in a different stage. You know, Krishna has been with the company for 1 year. Pat, you've been there for a long time, but it sounds like, you know, you've grown and evolved. And Chocha, you've just reinvented your career. So very, you know, unique perspectives that as we go through some of the discussions here, I think will certainly come through. So thank you again for joining. I'd like to start off with talking about career journey. Like, you know, one of the things I love hearing about is how people get to where they are. Certainly we have senior people on this, and you don't start that way. So if we can start with Krishna, can you share your career journey, the types of roles you've had building up to where you find yourself today?
Sure. I was born into a healthcare family. My dad was a retired Army surgeon. My mom, gynecologist, brother in cardiology, sister in dermatology. I'm the black sheep in the family who decided not to pursue medicine as a career, but healthcare apparently was in the DNA that somehow or the other I was going to make my way back to it. So my career in data and analytics did not happen by plan. I think there were so many twists and turns along the way. Early on, I was mostly in management consulting, focused on technology, strategy, technology solutions. And that's where most of my focus was. But I reached a kind of a point where I wasn't sure where this was taking me. Went to NYU to do my MBA, really made a lot of contacts, met a couple of mentors along the way, who one of them pulled me into Bristol-Myers Squibb to explore leadership roles in technology. And from there, I happened to, coming out of the elevator, somebody pulled me and saying, hey, there's a project that is in trouble. Do you want to take a look at it? And it turned out to be a master data management project. So I had to quickly learn about master data management 101, get involved in it, and that launched my career in data. From there, I saw that my interest was at that intersection of business, analytics, data, and technology. And took a variety of roles across quote unquote business and IT, all centered around digital strategy, data, and analytics before drawing the short straw to be the first chief data officer at Bristol-Myers Squibb in a role that was created. And then from there, have kind of moved on to Zoetis to become the chief data analytics officer and head of digital strategy. So healthcare from a DNA perspective was there, I guess, in the gene pool, but my interest in technology strategy and what I really gravitated to from a career perspective are those roles which are at the intersect of business strategy, technology strategy, or quote unquote digital strategy, where I found that my strength was that I could relate to multiple points of view and be that boundary spanner and bridge builder between business strategy and tech strategy. And that's what led me to this position. But I wouldn't say that this was part of any well-planned master plan. It was just taking a chance along the way, taking some risks and positions. But most importantly, a couple of mentors whose voices at critical points gave me the confidence to pursue these kind of opportunities.
Great, thanks, Krishna. You know, I love that you said it wasn't this well thought out plan, but when you look back on it, can you certainly see the linkages of all the steps to get you to where you are?
It was interesting you asked that. The other day, my younger one, who's just graduating and is finishing in December from Northeastern, is applying to various positions. And he, you know, when you're just out of school, you think that the first position he's going to take is going to make or break your career. And I was trying to tell him, saying that don't worry about it, just take it from a learning opportunity standpoint. Because I was reflecting on some of the lessons that I go back to today was in the earliest experience I had. 2 years into my first job, I was shipped off into Zurich airlifted into the middle of a security settlement stock exchange project, and interacting with a multinational audience, multiple points of view, and then learning on the fly. And that ability to work with a variety of teammates and colleagues is something that I rely on even today. So I do think that looking back, it seems like there was somebody had a plan, and that I was just going along the way. But I think the two things that is always defined is being unafraid to take a chance when it didn't look certain that this is the role for me, which includes this role at Zoetis. And three is that willingness to kind of invest time and energy to learn, and then accept that you're going to have your learning curve and credibility curve along the way. I think those two has marked the pivots along my career.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. Pat, if I could ask you to build on that, perhaps with a slightly different angle, can you talk about some of the key business opportunities, challenges that you're working on, and all the different wide variety of resources that or roles that are involved in that, just to try to shape and explain the way these things come together at a company?
Absolutely, absolutely. So the challenge of the big product that my company is bringing to market today is what we call cloud, just basically backing up and sharing everything that's on all of your computing devices, whether it's your phone, your tablet, your PC, your set-top box, being able to take your photos, your videos, and have your content kind of follow you around and safe and secure in the cloud. And that is really, it requires a village to do something like that, to build a solution like that then you can sell to a carrier. And it requires a really wide set of skills to put in place. You kind of break it down to different layers. You have to build the infrastructure to do this. So you need people that have strong storage, compute, and virtualization skill sets. People who are experts in packages like Kubernetes, and then site reliability engineers to make sure that you can get this software deployed when it's needed. And on top of that, you have application specialists, people who can write software in either Java or iOS, Swift, Objective-C, and Android to basically make the application that gets used. And once you have all those, then you have all this data, and you have to be able to turn that data into information that people can act on. So you have your data analysts, your database engineers, you have your experts in SQL, Cassandra, and just people who are really well versed at being able to manage tens of petabytes of data and billions and billions and billions of photos, and making sure that you can crawl them quickly. And then finally, at the end of that stack, you have your AI and ML people who can come in and do all the cool stuff, right? Make that content pop so that photo you took in Mexico last year shows up, but it's the good one, not the bad one, right? And how do you do that? You need people who are well versed in things like computational vision, right? Can build models, right? And you can work with partners to get that type of work done. And it's a wide variety of skill sets up and down that stack. But at the end of the day, there's one common theme across all those, which is the more skilled you are at utilizing that data, the more you can get out of the more valuable you are to the organization, and the more you can improve the product that we're working on. So while there's many different ways to get there, it's turning that data into information is at the end of the day the most useful thing that you can bring to the table.
Great, thanks, Pat. You're really showing the power of a team too, and just all the different skill sets that come together to make that happen. Yeah. So, we heard Krishna talk as a seasoned professional, the journey to get there. Pat, you just talked about all the people that you need to solve these business challenges. Chitra, can you talk about people, skills, that skill component, maybe the top 2-3 skills when you look in bringing in talent, whether they're soft skills, hard skills, go for it, however you think you want to shape the discussion around skills and people.
One constant refrain that comes up all the time about data analytics, visualization projects, and AI projects is most of them turn into an R&D proof of concept work rather than production quality systems. So that therein lies the rub of why I would say AI is not pervasive in every organization. People do a lot of incubation projects, but very few organizations have cracked the recipe for that. And the recipe lies in, I call a core team of top talent, crackerjack talent. And what would the form and shape of that team would be? So it's a teamwork, definitely, going back to, so no one person can have, may have all the skills. In order to, with all this 30 years of R&D to client engagement, large scale client engagement, you need to have somebody called a data curator, is an essential component of a data analytics and AI projects, data engineer, and a data scientist or a data analyst. And I would also add in an AI specialist, where the specialization may be in speech processing or NLP handling, or in computer vision, which was my PhD, but it was all about. So with that, one thread that connects them all in terms of, I'm going to talk about the hard skills you mentioned, is that I would say comfort and facility with the data analytics tools, right? Whether you're a SQL wizard or you can work magic and wonders in Google Sheets or in Excel, just the ability to be able to take in a lot of data and start cutting them into patterns that you can communicate with, right? So then, of course, you go to the advanced skills of programming, where you need to have a strong technical skill, programming skill, whether it's Python is your religion, or R or Java, JavaScript, but having a very strong competency in a programming language, specifically attuned to analyzing data, where you can benefit from a large collection of libraries and packages, I think is also important. Thirdly, not to forget, industry or domain knowledge is very critical. Anybody can write a logistic regression model with any data. You can go to Kaggle and get some data and build it. But what makes sense? Does it really, did we convert the data into insights, actionable insights that somebody on the street is really benefiting from that? Because now we provided the best recommendation for the movie they need to watch that night. So how do we use AI to remake the lives? That aspect of it comes from deep understanding of what matters. What's the language of the industry? What problems are worth solving? So industry knowledge is very important to take a generic AI data analytics project into a meaningful value providing solution. That's all on the technical part. Soft skills are extremely important. Of course, they're a staple of soft skills. The three I would highlight, I have seen again and again as a winning formula, is curiosity, especially with data, right? You have to have curiosity to say why it is performing the way it is, whether you get out astounding results or it doesn't work. You have got to have the curiosity to follow through. And then an eye for detail. We are working with data, whether it is text or speech or tons and tons of numeric data. You've got to have the eye for detail, because eye for detail is what is going to help you avoid bad mistakes. This model is saying women resumes do not make good engineers. Wait a minute. It makes you, it needs to, that eye for detail will make you pause and say, what is going on here? Let me poke at it. And I would also say, lastly, it's a healthy dose of skepticism, right? There's so much data, one can be carried away by putting it into this mixture of analytical models and AI solutions, and voila, something comes out of it. Keep a healthy dose of skepticism into what you're observing. So when I taught data curation curator bootcamp with the patronage of SheTek to help people reskill over the this past summer, that was one I reinforced, I reiterated that don't believe everything that the data says. So I would emphasize those three skills in terms of soft skills. And communication is all that goes hand in hand. You've got to be able to communicate why the particular AI solution, the predictive model is performing. You've got to be able to open up. I have an anecdote. During the 2008 housing crisis, it was very interesting. Fannie and Freddie Mae, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, they were in front of the, they were asked to come in and be part of the congressional hearings why the real estate market, the housing market collapsed, and they were running predictive models for 30 plus years. Nobody was able to explain why they couldn't see the pattern they ought to have been seeing had they been really running these models and focusing on explainability, right? That tells us that we got to be, in order for our data analytics accountable, transparent, and responsible, we got to be very careful about the results.
Yeah, thanks, Chitra. I mean, I love the things you highlighted there, because I think, everyone that's participating here can find, I'm sure all of you have some of those skills in that set. So you have components to be successful in the data analytics, AI visualization space. So I'd love to ask Pat or Krishna, do you, with what Chitra explained on the skills, are any of those ones that, you'd highlight that you find are key gaps that you have, or even just to add on to what the skills piece is, especially the industry knowledge? I think that's an interesting one, because you can't necessarily teach that comes with experience.
I think Chitra mentioned quite a few, and I agree with her. What I find interesting is that there is a lot of convergence of quantitative and non-quantitative skills that is becoming important. So for example, if you're sitting across the table from a sales and marketing leader who for years have done gut-based decision-making, and you're an analyst who has come up with a model that is asking him or her to change strategy and invest elsewhere, well, that influencing and convincing and telling the story around the data becomes paramount. So what we find in our recruitment efforts is not that it is easy, it is highly competitive. You can recruit data talent, technology talent, we can invest in them. But the art of storytelling and being able to empathize with the consumer / customer or stakeholder at the other side of the table and be able to demystify analytics and data science so that we can make decisions of it. You can make the best models in the world, but if you're not going to make any decisions of it, or you're not going to take actions of it, it is just what it is. It is a good model that we can all feel good about. And I think that is, so what I find, I was talking to an early talent in our organization. She comes from a liberal arts degree, really great communication skills, but very curious about data and others. And we are investing in her to build up some of the quantitative talent, quantitative expertise, tools and technology expertise. But what she brings to the table is really great communication skills. She can convey the story of what the data tells in a really good way. And so I think what I would encourage all of the audience to say is, I hear a lot of hesitancy from many people in pursuing careers in data science analytics, saying that it's just this, deep technical field. Well, today, the tools and technologies are evolving so fast that many things that you bring to table, whether it is storytelling skills, whether it is your creative skills, I think those all are becoming increasingly important, because it is all, at the end of the day, it is about facilitating good decisions and good actions with the data and analytics informing them. So if you're somebody who's thinking about data science and analytic career and have never done coding in the past, I would say don't be discouraged. I think there are pathways that you can find. Yes, you have to cross some basic data technology skills, but today that is not the hardest thing. Harder thing is really convincing stakeholders to take decisions and actions of it, and to tell the story in a way that people believe in it. Because along with digital innovation, and every day all the news articles are showing about lack of digital trust, technology fraying the human connections, or whether it is cyber attacks, people are worried about where their data is used. So the role that people have to play in building confidence through the right storytelling and right communication is becoming more and more important in the field of data science and analytics. So I think it's a great time to be a digital data geek like me. The amount of impact you can have is pretty substantial. But really a confluence of different skill sets is what is important.
Just to follow up on what Krishna was saying, and kind of riffing off of it takes a village. Often you find you'll be able to find people with specialization in one or two areas, but it's that rare person that also understands the actual problem that you're trying to solve at the high level, and can step back from what they're an expert in to understand how to move the ball forward in that larger problem. So maybe you're a SQL expert, or you're a Java expert, or you're great at building a model, right? Sometimes, you have to understand that the segment you're in may not be the way to solve the problem, and be able to step back and say, hey, what other skill sets that are out there, and having a good understanding of kind of the wider spectrum of skill sets to help move that ball forward is a key thing. Because we often will find that, hey, the Java guys will try to solve it in Java. The SQL guys will try to solve a problem in SQL that maybe you should never solve in SQL. Right? So having that perspective of the different capabilities across the stack is crucial, but also being able to step back and understand the actual problem you're trying to solve. Right? At the end of the day, it's not about the technology, right? It's about the problem you're trying to solve, and the technology is a tool you're using to get there, and always keeping that in mind. And then to answer your question very directly about skill sets, this is a hot area right now. Up and down the board, it's a hot area. But one thing I would encourage everyone here, and kind of what Krishna was saying, is you don't have to be an expert in hardcore programming here. There's an impact that people can make in organizations if they're good with Excel, if they're good with Google Sheets. But for us, and for the industry that I'm in right now, one area that is definitely hard to find. There's a lot of those more the back end folks being able to scale the data and get the data ready for these models and for the analysis, being able to deal with that. That's one area where we do struggle to find people. And one area that I'd say, when you're looking at your journey from data analytics, there's a lot of exciting stuff kind of at the top where it gets to the models and the visualization, but you need the data at the end of the day. And the folks who can actually help deal with that, those massive data sets, they're hard to find.
Great answers. So I do want to make sure we leave enough time for questions, because I think there's some there, but I'd love to, maybe we'll start with you, Chitra, around certain tools, practice areas, and even any books and sites that people always ask me, where do you read? Where do you find this information? So Chitra, I'll let you go, and then we'll go around the horn here on that.
So I think everyone is a Google expert by now. So some of the things that I have found, often as I mentor the early entrants, building on the point that came through the data curator bootcamp, as well as from Krishna and Pat, is that there are areas within the problem solving with AI and machine learning where deep skills are necessary, but that should not be a barrier to become part of a team where you can contribute very effectively with the other kinds of skills. That's why this data curator camp we gave that confidence to people who have never even touched an Excel workbook, right? So I want to make that I want to start with that, because depending on where you are, whether you're a beginner who is now fascinated with everything that is going on in the world and you want to get started, definitely there are amazing websites. Just I'm going to call out, no endorsement, no connection. I want to make the disclaimer. So I think some of the Stanford provides an amazing course in data analytics and AI with certification. Udemy and Coursera, they have. So when you check out some of these classes, when you search, you're going to find millions and millions of people who have taken that. That should give you a quality rating, as well as Harvard. So there's a whole slew of, I look at it as this massively open courses online. That's that Coursera, Udemy, and then universities have begun to offer these courses also online with certification. And then industries have also jumped on. IBM offers AI certification with knowledge of Watson APIs and so on. So depending on where the target is and what level you want to enter in, there is tons and tons of material for beginners. So you can evaluate yourself and choose the right level of course in any of these places, I would say. Then second thing people ask me about is data. It's one thing to learn about, okay, I now, I've learned Python and I know to use Python packages, and now I lack data. Where do I get meaningful data? Rather than getting lost, I would say, go to Kaggle. Kaggle has lots of meaningful problems with data sets available. So that's often I check what people are doing, right? If I want to give exercises to begin people, why don't you go with it? So of course, there are tons of government websites also with data, where I spend quite a bit of time in terms of, Bureau of Labor and economic websites and so on. So data is another thing. You need to work on good data. So I would say, pick a language that's most comfortable to you, depending on where you are, and go with it. Python is the hot and top one. I just read a recent survey also. It's still the top one year after year because of its very ease of, the very nature of programming is. So picking a programming language in order to do these projects will also be very helpful. Then I noted down several other things. Jupyter, these are all for people who are in the middle level to the advanced level, who want to pick them up or move them to this. So Jupyter environments, Colabs provided by Google, Anaconda packages, runtime environments. So those are things that you should look up and get familiar with, because as you go from doing a tiny project and seriously building a system level production quality solution, it takes all the skills that you need that I'm mentioning. And of course, there are strong, very specialized AI APIs from Watson, Google, Amazon, and Microsoft. So just making sure I throw in all the names so that there's no one feels left out. So there is enough there. So you really pick your favorite, soup there. What else? So you have, the thing I would say is, it's not enough to attend these courses. You've got to practice. You've got to take a data set, put it through whatever tool of your choice. If you just want to, even Excel affords lots and lots of analysis capabilities in itself, visualization, Tableau, Power BI, or even in Excel. You got to process the data. You got to see the data for the patterns in it, not just look at them as numbers and text and so on. So it's really, that's what I would, reinforce again and again. Practice with real data and get a nose for it. Develop your nose for looking at, sniffing out patterns. What is wrong? What is anomalous? What stands out? Visualize it. Tell a story to your friend. I looked at this data, and this is what happened.
Yeah, I think everyone became a data scientist when we started looking at the COVID data, right? These charts got put in front of everyone, and we started looking at it and coming up with our own interpretation. So I know people have used that data set for learning using these different tools. So thank you for sharing all those different resources and sites to look at. In terms of what's on your bookshelf and what are the different things that you're reading, Pat, I'll start with you. Anything that you'd offer up to the team that you're looking at?
Sure. I mean, I'll give you two books. One that I've read recently that I enjoyed a lot, and one from back in the past that I think is still kind of really valid. One recently was a book called Prediction Machines, which is it's all about sort of, I'd say, demystifying AI and how it's used, or how it can be used to make decisions in corporate America. So it's a really good read. I found it very entertaining, but also it's easy to get really deep in the technology and forget the problems that you're trying to solve. And it's an excellent perspective on how all the I'd say the data revolution and a lot of what has become commonplace from an AI point of view in the last 10 years is being applied to problems from sort of the CEO down to every member, every level in the company. And it's definitely worth a read or a listen on Audible. And it'll really kind of help you understand why this is so valuable to corporate America, right? Like why there's so much demand. It's a great read for that. And then going back a little bit, and a lot of what we're talking about here is, at the end of the day, you're going to be, doing some analysis and probably writing some software in some form or fashion to do that analysis. And there's an excellent book called The Cathedral and the Bazaar, which is, kind of two different philosophies of how to build systems and build software, one from the top down or one from the bottom up, and kind of the pros and cons of that. And it's an older book, but it's definitely very valid. It's, again, a very entertaining read, but it also a really good insight into how you build software to do things like data analytics. One other thing I would, I'd be remiss not to say is, in addition to reading, I think podcasts are a great place to go to stay current and stay up to speed on many different things. One in particular that I listen to a lot is called Postlight. It's two practitioners that own an agency in New York that work on all types of problems, big data being one of the things that they work on, and listening to the challenges of the different customers and the different implementations. So, between that, YouTube, and, all the educational capabilities that are on YouTube, things like Edureka or Free Code Camp, you can really, depending if you want to listen, you want to read, or you want to watch, it's a lot of different ways, to kind of stay current with the industry as a whole.
Great. Krishna, how about you?
Yeah, I think a couple of recommendations, which COVID forced a small LinkedIn network community to take multiple books. And I was also caught in that by taking up a book and trying to see whether I can finish it in a week. It didn't last for a long time. It was so much of a time commitment. But a couple of standouts from those one was Competing in the Age of AI by Professor Karim Lakhani and Marco Iansetti, really talking about how companies are punching above their weight class powered by AI. Really interesting book where smaller companies are able to take on behemoths with AI at its core. The second one, which is more on a personal interest level, is called Essentialism by Greg McKeown. I have a lot of eclectic interests and drive myself crazy trying to chase all of the different things that I want to do. So this book was very influential in really trying to prioritize. And you have only 24 hours in a day, and then how do you prioritize and how do you spend them? So it had some intriguing ideas which I found easy to implement in my day-to-day. One of them being, if you have multiple things, if you're taking something on, if the answer is hell yeah, I want to do this, then do it. Otherwise, it's a no. And so that has been, so rather than spread yourself thin across 100 different things, trying to prioritize and focus. So essentialism is the second recommendation. And I think it's, and Pat said podcasts, many different podcasts, especially if you're interested in the idea of data analytics and digital, quite a few podcasts that is worth checking out. But if you look at LinkedIn, I think there is an active network that is emerging around this topic of digital data and analytics and book sharing that is going on. Quite a few recommendations I picked up is from that community.
Great, thanks. We tried to capture some on the chat. We could probably do some update through what everybody mentioned. Chitra, any books to add? I know you mentioned a lot of sites and resources. Any books?
Yeah, I'll mention a couple. And one is, I thought I had mentioned this one. He's the brain behind Coursera, among a lot of other amazing stuff he has done. He has written something called Machine Learning E-Learning, technical strategy for AI engineers in the eve of deep learning. What I liked about it is it's not about how the machine learning techniques, but how to think about building a practical AI or a data analytics system. What goes into it? How do you set up such a project? What need? It's not about the minutiae of what gets done, but the macro level of. So I think it's a great book. Somebody who is aspiring to become a manager, right? Manager of AI and data and machine learning projects. And he keeps updating it. So therefore, a lot of good pearls of wisdom, over time. The other one is more of I've been thinking quite a bit because of the work I do around caregivers and how do you help them make the right decisions about keeping their loved ones at home, loved ones with dementia at home, or what drives them to moving their loved ones into assisted care facilities and so on. So there's a lot of fraught decisions during the entire caregiving period. But people don't make rational decisions. So the decisions often pivot and anchor on something that we cannot even sometimes anticipate. So I've been reading quite a bit on behavioral economics. So this book, but it's written, I read the scholarly articles, but this is a book I enjoyed on the other side of it. Michael Lewis, who has written amazing stuff from Moneyball to Big Short, he has written this thing called The Undoing Project, a friendship that changed the minds. It's really, maybe I was a geek, or it was unputdownable, because it's, at one level, it's a book about a friendship that led to Nobel Prize. It really, their work made the foundation of what behavioral economics has come to rely on. Daniel Kahneman, some of you might know, Daniel Kahneman went on to receiving the Nobel Prize because Emmer Tversky passed away before that. But it's just an amazing book, written in a very relatable way by Michael Lewis, tracking their early research all the way in Israel to their time in the US. So while you can read it for pleasure, there are also very interesting turns on how human minds thinks when posited, when faced with conundrums, hard decisions. What would they, how people end up making what might seem to be rational decision on the surface.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. I know we're at time. I thought there might have been questions on the side, but there might not be. I don't know if we have a moment or if we're ending hard at 4:30, Meg.
Stacey, actually, I posted a question. This is Chaya. I can read my question. So my question is, first of all, thanks so much for a great discussion. My question is, in the current rapid development world and the need to create quick POCs, what's your advice in embracing data in the overall strategy when the vision is not clear upfront?
So Chai, I think I would say that that's there are a couple of I wouldn't say problem, but challenges that anybody who is in data and analytics or digital and technology strategy face today. One, lack of organizational patience. So having multi-year roadmaps and slow value cycles is tough to pull through. It's tough to pull off. Second is, especially in AI, what I would call pilotitis, where we launch so many pilots. And a friend of mine who is a chief analytics officer in another company told me that there are more AI pilots than pilots in United and Delta combined. And it's just like, and then not thinking through the scaling aspect and the sustaining aspect of it. So I think the balancing act that we have forced to do is that you have to show rapid time to value with the data analytic projects. You cannot keep the business audience with you or your leadership audience with you without it. But at the same time, how do you have the right strategies around sustainable things that the infrastructure that requires investment, it's not going to happen overnight. So that is the art than science that everybody is forced with. And it's not an either or, it's an and equation.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions? Let's see. How does your day look like being a data expert? What do you enjoy the most of your work? And what do you find is the most challenging? Who wants to take that one?
That's an easy one. I'll take it. I mean, because I can't wait to get up in the morning to start thinking about the data that I'm seeing, how people are using our system, and what does it, how do we use the data that we are collecting to deliver even better value in terms of personalization and so on. So that's the enjoyable part, right? I think in my day, I think people look at numbers. For them, it's numbers. For me, it's patterns or a story that is hidden there, waiting for me to tease out and mine for it to be able to deliver value to the clients whom I served before or now I'm serving. So therefore, I always think of myself as a detective. Can't wait to solve the problem every day. So that's the enjoyable part, right? So the challenging part could be this. The problem is there's so much data that is available. You've got to be very careful about how to verify the veracity of the data, right? It's so easy. People, oh, why don't you use social media data? Why don't you use this, data from the website? So you got to be careful about where the data is coming from. That's why the data curator role we emphasized is all about that. Not only integration of the data, but to have a mechanism and the skill to ascertain the veracity and the volatility of the data. So that is often, because I think gone are the days where we would build systems using only what I would call enterprise quality data, where the data is collected and verified and vetted and cleansed and so on. Often now we have to know where the people are. People are often outside posting about my company and your company, and you got to blend that in. And when you start getting data from outside, how do you? So that is often, especially dealing with data, to be able to develop mechanisms that can scale in terms of understanding the value and understanding their genesis, provenance, and their staleness, how often it will be refreshed, etc. So you got to be constantly thinking about. So 60% of the work, you probably have, this depends on which project you're working on, 60 to 70% of the work in data analytics project goes in processing, collecting, cleaning, and processing the data before you can even get to building fancy models on it. So that would be the challenging part.
One other challenge I'd add, and it kind of follows up on what Chitra is saying, is typically organizations love data when it proves their hypothesis. They're a little less friendly to it when it disproves their hypothesis. So, making sure you understand the data that you're working with and that you're drawing the right conclusions. But, it's hard to have a conversation with a product manager about their favorite feature when the data shows no one's using it, and why you would continue to invest in that feature. But at the end of the day, that's why this field is so important. But just, when you say what makes it challenging, it's when that data says maybe what people don't want to hear, right? That's always, a little more challenging than the data that's verifying their assumption.
Yep.
The only two things I'll quickly add is one, enjoy is when you see the impact of an idea and seeing what it can really do within a company or outside a company. I think that seeing the impact of the idea coming to life is really enjoyable. What I don't find so much interesting is meeting mania, especially with COVID, and and the number of meetings per day, even for it has become really exhausting. So less meetings, more creative work would be my plea.
Well, I think thank you all. Thank you to Krishna, Pat, Chitra for sharing all this great information. And I'm going to quote Krishna and say we all should be saying hell yeah to data analytics, visualization, and AI. That's certainly how I feel about it. So thank you for joining us today. I don't know if Chaya or Meg, you have any final words here, but
thank you so much, Kristen. You've done a fabulous job moderating this, and I know you can also speak and contribute a lot to this with your knowledge and experience. But I really thank Chitra, Pat, and Krishna also for joining and for a wonderful, very, very interesting conversation.